So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us online. We are on the 6th day of the Thessaloniki International Film Festival, the 62nd edition, our hybrid edition. We are very happy to be back in Thessaloniki and in the pier and warehouse C, where last night we gave the Agora awards, and we had something like 325 physical meetings here, and many industry professionals came from abroad. So it's back. We're happy to be a little bit back in the normality that we were used to. But today we're going to talk about a very important subject and something that is very urgent, and we need to learn about it and get educated. So we have here with us speakers Nicole Gerhards, producer from NiKo Film Germany, and Anika Kruse. She is a green consultant and transformation manager from Filmsynthese Germany, and our panel moderator Emma Doxiadi, filmmaker and Filmsos founder. So I will let them to talk about all these important issues because they are the experts. Thank you and enjoy the session. Questions you can put on the chat box and we will deal with them by the end of the presentation. Thank you.
So hi everyone and welcome to this panel. Thank you to the Thessaloniki Film Festival for hosting such an important conversation. My name is Emma Doxiadi. I'm a filmmaker and the founder of Filmsos, an initiative I began with fellow filmmaker Alexandra Matteo and sustainability consultant Christos Retos. Filmsos is Greece's first initiative that aims to inspire, accelerate, and amplify environmental and social sustainability in the Greek audiovisual sector through raising awareness, education, and training through various actions and content. In our panel, we'll get to see what environmental sustainability in filmmaking looks like, why it matters, and hopefully by the end of this conversation, we can all leave with a better understanding of how we can incorporate better practices and get a better perspective on the issue. Today, I'm joined by two fascinating industry experts hailing from Germany. They have already been introduced. Hi, Nicole and Anika. Just to give you a very brief sense of the panel structure, firstly, I'm going to give a quick context into our subject matter, and then I will hand it over to Anika and Nicole for the incredible presentation they have prepared for us today on film sustainability. And then there will be time for some follow-up questions. I think it's safe to say that the general public doesn't think about the relationship of film and the environment. So why are we having this panel in the first place? The climate crisis concerns us all. Humans are increasingly influencing the climate and the Earth's temperature through burning fossil fuels, cutting down forests, and farming livestock. This is something that adds enormous amounts of greenhouse gases to those that are naturally occurring in the atmosphere, and they lead to an increase in temperature. An increase of 2 degrees Celsius compared to the temperature that exists in pre-industrial times has been associated with serious impacts on the environment, human health, and well-being, including a much higher risk for dangerous and catastrophic changes in the global environment. For this reason, the international community has recognized this need to keep warming well below 2 degrees Celsius and pursue efforts to keep it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And we are seeing each societal sector mobilizing in any way they can. There are economic factors behind this, political pressure. An example is the EU Green Deal, and there's pressure from individuals as well for all aspects of society to change. We are already seeing it across multiple artistic industries. We're seeing sustainability being implemented and the climate crisis entering the conversation. We see examples of it in the fashion industry and also in various initiatives such as Extinction Rebellion, Music Declares Emergency, and many more. There are truly myriads of initiatives across all sectors from all over the world that are starting to promote social and ecological sustainability. And the film industry must do the same, and it is starting to, and it is also time for the Greek one to do it as well. So I wanted to hand it over now to you, Nicole and Anika, and your exemplary case of intervention in the film industry.
Thank you very much, Emma. So I will share now our desktop. And yeah. Do you see the presentation now?
Yes.
Okay. So hello and welcome to our brief presentation on green production. First of all, just to inform you, all references mentioned and shown here will be sent at the end of this event. Okay. The basic principles behind greening a production include conserving fuel and energy, avoiding toxins and pollution, saving water, reducing plastics, preventing landfill waste, collect and analyze data, using a carbon calculator, report and share best practices. Implementing these principles on set, where time is money and daily life is fast-paced, can be tricky. So let's go for it. In the next 30 minutes, we will give you an idea which strategies and measures could be implemented in your workflow as producers in order to produce more sustainably. But first of all, some ideas about our situation regarding the climate change. That's how fast the carbon clock is ticking. What does this mean exactly? The carbon clock shows how much CO2 can be released into the atmosphere to limit global warming to a maximum of 1.5 degrees Celsius, respectively. It shows the remaining carbon budget as well as our remaining time, which is approximately 7 years and 8 months. Furthermore, the budget of staying below the 2 degrees Celsius threshold for its part would be exhausted in about 25 years. The IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, last updated its estimate of the remaining carbon budget in summer 2021 with the presentation of the first part of its 6th assessment report. According to report on the 1.5 degrees Celsius target, the atmosphere can absorb, calculated from the beginning of 2020, no more than 400 gigatons of CO2 if we are to stay below the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold and before resulting in the very dangerous level of global warming. So, apropos dangerous level of global warming. These warming stripe graphics are visual representations of the change in temperature as measured in each country over the past 100 years. Each stripe represents the temperature in that country averaged over a year. For most countries, the stripes start in the year 91 and finish in 2020. For virtually every country or region, the stripes turn from mainly blue to mainly red in more recent years, illustrating the rise in average temperature in your country. But why are there no numbers on the graphics? These graphics are specially designed to be as simple as possible and to start conversations about our warming world and the risk of climate change. There are numerous sources of information which provide more specific details about how temperature have changed. So these graphics fill a gap and enable communication with minimal scientific knowledge required to understand their meaning. The fire and thermal anomalies layer of NASA shows daily around the world active fire detections and thermal anomalies such as volcanoes and gas flares. This, what you see is a few days ago, you see Greece and Thessaloniki, and now you will see the situation in August in this year, all around the world. So, do you know what the doomsday clock is? The clock represents the hypothetical global catastrophe as midnight, and the bulletin's opinion on how close the world is to a global catastrophe as a number of minutes or seconds to midnight, assessed in January of each year. The main factors influencing the clock are nuclear risk and climate change. The bulletin's clock is not a gauge to register the ups and downs of the international power struggle. It is intended to reflect basic changes in the level of continuous danger in which mankind lives in the nuclear age. So now we are starting a video.
This is an awareness test. How many times does the team in white pass the ball? If you answered 13 passes, you are correct. But did you see the moonwalking gorilla?
So why do we show you this video? This video represents in an interesting but simple way how the psychological phenomenon of inattentional blindness can affect us all, even when we are in a relatively relaxed state at the moment. It goes without saying that we rely on our experiences and routines in our jobs, especially when we find ourselves in a tense situation. With regard to politics, especially with regard to the circumstances of climate change affecting us, threatening us, our children, and the next generations. Perceptual blindness is when a person fails to perceive an unexpected stimulus that is within sight because they are not attentive enough. The degree of processing depends on the current perceptual load. Since attention is not infinite and always concentrated, things are overlooked as soon as one looks at them in an inattentive moment. Psychology is familiar with these phenomena in all sensory perceptions. This phenomenon also influences our ability to think adaptively. Let's call this mind overload, especially when we are under time pressure, have to do several things at once, or have to find quick solutions. The whole thing is made even more difficult when primary financial aspects are related to the precision of our work and are evaluated. Let's call this work or even stress overload. And the stress overload versus responsibility attitude, because we feel responsibility, we are stress overloaded, our mind is overloaded with our situation, but we have to work and we have to do our work and we have to be responsible. And now I hand over to Nicole.
Hello, everybody. So all these facts about the climate changing, if you name it friendly, catastrophe, if you face it, are really scary. I had nights where I couldn't sleep, where I felt very guilty because of all my ecological sins and my carbon footprint, and I felt hopeless too. Afraid of the future of my children, not to think of my grandchildren, and for so many people already suffering of droughts, hunger, floods, and fires. It used to happen elsewhere, which doesn't make it better, but climate change has definitely arrived in Europe. Fires in Greece, droughts and floods in Germany. Climate change does also affect psychological well-being. Substantial research has documented harmful impacts on physical health. It can be denial at first, and then you may have some fear and anger and then sadness. Eco-anxiety can often lead people towards paralysis. The sense that the hopelessness is so immense that they start concluding that there's nothing to be done. But there is a lot to do. And I think one feels much better if you start doing what you can do. Film and especially the shooting has quite a big carbon footprint. Even though we develop and finance our films for many years, shooting mostly lacks money and time. The increasing climate crisis requires immediate action and preventive measures from each and every one of us. So being a filmmaker, a producer, an entrepreneur, and we decided in 2019, especially Karsten Stöter and my colleague from Rohfilm in Germany and I, that we have to, that we really have to think about everything what we can do. And we made a green pledge for sustainable film production through reduction, reuse, and compensation. So by signing the Green Pledge, we committed ourselves and our employees to conceiving and producing our films sustainably and with a low environment impact, implementing several measures which we're going to explain together. So in December 2019, about 50 production companies, I think now we're about 60s, signed the Green Pledge for Sustainable Film. We opened it to everybody, so we're happy to share it with everybody. Everybody can use the texts if they want them in other countries. So it's really not something we did on ourselves. There are a lot of organizations already in Germany who do similar things, but we had the feeling it's important for us to think, to do the work and to think ourselves what we can do. So it was, I don't know, doing these pledge, I think it took us about 3 or 4 months. And there have been a lot of discussions around it also. We've been, it's within the producer association. And I think people sometimes are afraid what you can make your team do and where you start to forbid them things. We had very passionate discussions about meat and about transport, and we'll tell a bit more about it. So I think it's crucially that if you're doing a film, that's the main, especially those who act as role models, such as directors, lead actors, and head of departments, and of course, us as producers, are convinced and involved in this process early on, that we communicate transparently and share information in order to motivate our team to achieve the goals of the Green Pledge. So it's about finding partners and about doing it together. So we had several measures like transportation, technology, accommodation, catering, waste, plastic reduction, implementing a green consultant and communication, which were like the key elements of our Green Pledge. And
now, for example, the transportation at first, as a first measure, we can take, if you can see, flights are only to be taken by the producers or their employees if unavoidable and if the travel time by train exceeds 6 hours. And additional travel time will be considered in call times and planning. And agreeing to offset the CO2 emissions, and all transport will be pooled and conducted with the lowest possible carbon emissions.
This was one of the things where we had a lot of discussion, where also people were afraid that actors, for example, wouldn't want to fly or wouldn't want to take the train. But I think there has been so much changing in the minds now that actually, I mean, you really can speak to people, and if we say 6 hours, even if it's 8, sometimes they really prefer to take the train.
So as you can see, already in Europe, there are train spots, train distances less than 6 hours or less than 12 hours. So don't miss to discuss the possibilities of taking the train. Also for the transportation is very important in order to prepare a better logistic to create a travel plan ahead. Choose an accommodation as close to the filming location as possible, provide information about the nearest public transport and bike share stops, organize carpooling, and check energy efficiency of vehicle fleet and ensure vehicles are properly maintained. Concerning technology and energy, Nicole.
So in our pledge, we wrote, it's written, to reduce resource and energy usage, we commit to the use of environmental friendly technologies and materials, such as renewable electricity, LED lamps, rechargeable batteries instead of single-use batteries, vehicles with hybrid, electric, CNG or hydrogen motors, eco-friendly search engines, ecologically friendly materials for equipment, and more. We will prioritize products made from recycled material, and these aspects shall also be reflected in our supplier and accommodation choices. Of course, it's not always it's not always easy, even in Germany, but I think in a lot of countries, we very often do not have the possibilities to use the most environmentally friendly technology because it's not available. But more we make pressure on all our suppliers, more we will get there.
And what about accommodation? The best is to look into accommodation options and select a provider with environmental goals and preferably with an environmental certificate. There are certificates like Green Key, Green Globe, Biosphere, and the the Eco Label. If no environmentally certified lodgings are available, ask the accommodation provider about a minimum the recycling and used energy forms. Remotely located accommodation means savings in costs, also higher emissions and logistics.
Okay, food and meals. Set and production office catering will provide food that is mainly regional and seasonal. So that means very much less carbon footprint, and which has been produced according to organic and fair standards. This in particular applies to meat and dairy products. These shall generally be minimized and when served come from regional farms with ethically appropriate animal treatment. With the general consent of the set and production team, we aim to reduce meat-based meals to once a week only.
This sounds difficult, but why can't we do for the team initiate a meat eat survey and ask the team about their eating habits? Maybe half of the team is already vegetarian or vegan. How many people eat already vegan or vegetarian, and do they like to seize the opportunity of an alternative nutrition? Then for other things concerning catering, our aim is to tell you, try to avoid plastic bottles. There are other alternatives. There are bottles from aluminium or glass. You can use caps, you can have tap water. Try to cater for vegan option within the vegetarian offerings. Supply dishware if using reusable. Keep any recycling, food waste, general bins near catering tidy with correct bags and signs. And do not use paper items which are plastic lined, as these are not recyclable or compostable. And do not use any polystyrene, already forbidden in Germany, I think in Europe as well, or in all over Europe. And avoid wrapping individual foods or snacks in plastic. And aim to avoid products made with palm oil. Plastic means every day 1.3 billion bottles. Every day the equivalent of a bottle pile half the size of the Eiffel Tower, with a height of 325 meters in Paris, is sold around the world every day. Estimated decomposition rate of a plastic bottle is about 450 years.
Yes, we commit to consequently sorting and recycling any waste produced. So second-hand or borrowed materials shall always be prioritized over the purchase of new goods. So fashion, I mean, is also one of the biggest carbon footprint, how do you say, I don't find the word, sorry, but I mean, transport, meat, and fashion, they're responsible for the biggest parts. And we have to think about everything in every department where we can work with materials that can be reused and recycled or that were already used. So rental is much better than buying, for example.
So again, no plastic bottles, please. And try to separate the waste. Even trying and doing it, even when there are not the possibilities to separate it at the end. It might be a good educational work to train to separate all the important materials which can be recycled, as paper, glass, also plastic in a good quality, and aluminium, for example. And now let's go over to the green consultant.
So, as you can see, it's very complex. We have so many departments where we have to rethink, and so small and tiny things which we always used to do which we used to do a long time, and now we see the ecological impact of it. So green consultants are part of our pledge. We assign a green consultant or a designated team member with expertise to ensure that the above mentioned points are successfully implemented in our process. And we use a CO2 calculator to keep track of our CO2 balance, because creating awareness is the first thing. So Anika will tell you more about her work as a green consultant.
So my work is to, in the perfect world, to have the chance to analyze the script already, and to lead the team and the production company to zero waste, to do educational work, and to work on the social impact also for the team. It's important to do the screening, to have training, and to support everyone involved in the project. Gear management or grid management with a generator, or to measure what is important or what is needed of energy in the real. In the reality and not for safe, is a very important work to do. Also to check the supply chain, and also the vendor procurement, to see if every supplier works in a way which is sustainable or a bit sustainable. And also, as Nicole said, the data monitoring during the whole project, the collection of data and analysis, and to feed the CO2 calculator. And at the end, a green consultant is also asked to do a reporting on the protocol, to have some guidelines for the future and best practices, ideally. What you can do, and you will find this also in the sources we will send you afterwards, is, for example, the Green Production Guide as a cool toolkit where you can have an idea about eco-mapping already your production office. The stages and construction mills, the departments, the head of how to organize all the stuff in the studio, for example. Then also the work, the organization work on location, on the base and on location and at the set. So let's say what we can all do, which is not a mind overload and not a stress overload. It's quite simple and easy already to start flying less and organize other travel plannings. Eat seasonal and local.
Yeah, walk and cycle more, eat more plants.
Drive electric.
Work closest to last.
Talk to friends, work close to last, and
repair and reuse.
Yeah, and get alternative energy.
Yeah, don't get hopeless. There are a lot of things to do. We need to do things, and I mean, that's we're used to it now in the filmmaking to make almost impossible things possible.
Okay. So thank you very much. That's it.
Ευχαριστώ.
Ευχαριστώ.
Thank you so much. This was so fascinating to observe and experience. And each time I look at it, I feel the same. I wanted to see what questions we might have from our audience, but I just wanted to start off with just some follow-up questions. Could you tell us a little bit about how the Green Pledge was initially introduced to the industry?
So I think there was, as I said, there was a moment where a lot of organizations started doing green pledges, and also the funds did. But very often we had I mean, there were sometimes even, or our was a bit more strict. And I think, for example, the funds didn't dare to force us, the producers, not having enough money very often for our projects to implement things that maybe we couldn't fulfill. For example, they would say, we should only eat meat once a week. And we said, okay, we only eat meat once a week. So, I mean, what was quite sad is actually that very soon afterwards, we all were like overwhelmed by COVID. And so in the beginning, a lot of production were postponed. And of course, we all had to adapt to another crisis. And I think it took away a lot of energy of or attention of these facts. And I think now slowly it's getting back there. But of course, Corona contradicted a lot of these ideas, because suddenly you couldn't use, there was plastic again. And so I didn't shoot in Germany then, but what I heard from my fellows, it was just very, very difficult to do what we planned to do.
Mm-hmm. As I was listening to your presentation, I was also thinking back to a conversation we had a couple of days ago where we were discussing just how wide an array of options there are to make a set zero waste and more sustainable. And I believe that I shared that when I first started to learn more about sustainability as far as film production is concerned, because by no means do I claim to be an expert. I am a filmmaker who just, similar to you, Nicole, started realizing that there is all this going on in the world, and making a film can feel like it's the most important thing in the world, but I had not stopped to think about how equally important it is to consider how we make our film. And I did feel overwhelmed in the beginning, just because in Greece, this is not a conversation that we had started to have at the time. And I believe that we're still in a very early stage, but at least we're starting to raise awareness and discuss it. And what felt very liberating was the realization that, as you were saying, there are things that can be done on a bigger level that involve, sort of more policy-driven initiatives, as we see in many countries around the world at the moment. But in the cases where things are still in a very early stage and there isn't sort of this requirement, let's say, that is mandatory, it is still interesting, as we were discussing, to see that, doing what you can on a set and in the making of a film is no little thing. To do your best is also much better than saying, this is, I don't know where to start, so I'd rather wait until someone else does it, or wait until it is figured out and then I will do it either all in or not at all.
We had a part of our pledge was also the transparency, that we said, okay, let's speak openly about our experience, and let's say, okay, here we failed because of this and these reasons, and because it was just not impossible to make the actor use the train, or it's just an example, or we didn't find the cars, or I think it's really important not to try to do everything, or not to give up because you can't make it all in the beginning, but to be happy about everything that you can do. And as I say, some things are really easy, some are more complex, it's for me, not eating meat seems very easy. I know for others it doesn't. Not taking the plane, of course, it's somehow, I would have loved to be in Thessaloniki, but I would have found it not possible. So there we have, of course, to take some sacrifices.
Mm-hmm. And Anika, again, the position that you have as a green consultant, in other contexts we might find it called sustainability consultant. You did go through it here in the presentation, but could you give us an example of at what stage of a production you tend to come on board, or what would be the ideal, and how you kind of go ahead in terms of prep, how you would get to prepare?
As I mentioned at the beginning, in my perfect world, or in the perfect world of a green consultant or sustainability manager, might be also already being influenced in, or not influenced, involved in the script. Because also the green storytelling is a very, very important thing to think of, and being in touch with the creatives and open up the creative world to more opportunities, to more possibilities, and not to block something, or it's not stopping creativity. It's just a wider creativity to create stories which can implement planet placement and green storytelling. This is my perfect world, being already involved in the creative process with the director and the DOP and the production company and the producer, and then being part of the team and not being an additional role on the crew list. And having the possibility to accompany the whole process and the whole project. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There is, I mean, it's an obligation now also by the funds to have a green consultant. There is some money there. We get like 5,000 euros minimum, but I mean, to make it really efficient, especially in the first, I would say in the next 4 or 5 years, or where on one hand, everything is changing quickly, and where we need this awareness, because I don't know, in Germany, it gets much easier. There is a lot of products now on bamboo or what, so people try to change. But of course, it's so many things you have to know, and you, I mean, you can get lost. I think we definitely need green consultant on board, and we should take, I mean, it should be worse for us to do it.
Mm-hmm. We have a question here from Christos. Christos is the sustainability consultant of Film SOS. He's here in the chat. So he says, I'm curious, you discussed, Anika, about social impact. Could you elaborate on what that means in the context of your green consultant work?
From my understanding, the social impact is not to forget the team and the departments and the head of departments and their team, and all the conversation with, because every department has their own way of working, and in the end, okay, everybody has to work together. But the social impact is also wie heißt es, the break, die Ruhezeiten. To respect the pauses, to respect the how to say it, every single individual in work and life and balance, and to respect their workload, and to communicate with everybody and every team and every department, and to inform everybody and let them participate on this big journey, and motivate everybody, and respect the way of working and the way of time pressure, or the problem of time pressure and financial pressure or financial aspects.
Mm-hmm. Another point that I want to make, as prior to Christos's question, was talking about planet placement, which is a term that is used also for sort of implementing the climate crisis on a first level in the content of a film, be it documentary or fiction. But it also is talked about in more implicit ways, so more subtextual sometimes. So when we're talking about a film, when we're talking about, for instance, you know, nature documentaries or fiction films dealing in a very direct way with the environmental, whether this is ecological crisis or some social crisis. We also do see examples of films where they implement these ideas and ideals that we're discussing in how, aside from how the production is run, we see in screenwriting, for instance, there was an occasion where someone who's running an initiative that focuses on film sustainability in another country was mentioning how there is a green financial incentive in films that are green productions that they get in the end. But when they looked at the cut of the film, they saw that the protagonist was using a lot of plastic bags upon exiting the supermarket. And so this was something that was not really, even though the film was green as a set, its principles that the set was run through were not really integrated into the content of the film. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to think about, for me, it was very interesting to think about the subtle ways in which these ideas can be promoted as well. Again, as you were saying, without making it a mission to abstract from the creative drive that leads one to want to tell a specific kind of story, but there's different ways to start thinking about all these topics if sustainability comes into play from pre-production, from even the screenwriting stage.
Yeah. And concerning the social impact, it's also, as we mentioned in the measures from the pledge, to think about the locals around the location, the film set, just to not to fly people from another country over to the location, then to support the people in the country where the film is shot. This is also a kind, yeah. So
I mean, we're preparing a documentary which is about a filmmaker, a hopeless filmmaker, but seeing other forest guardians in different parts of the world. And we decided that we will work also with local shooting teams that accompany them there, and that not all the time our shooting team is going to be present for just when it's really important. And I think especially in the young generation, there is a lot of thinking already implemented, and you can see it also in the stories. Also, it's about green shooting, but it's also about diversity. So I see things changing, but then just what you said, sometimes you see films and you think, didn't you hear, have you been sleeping the last 5 years? How can you show plastic cups like this in a film? And I mean, being a role model, of course, you have to see not only what is behind, but also what is in front of the screen.
Absolutely. What would you say are some of since you have already started, of course, making a lot of progress in Germany in this field, what would you say are still some of the remaining biggest challenges of making films in a sustainable manner?
The availability of innovative techniques, technical alternatives to generators. This is the most important thing now, having the things available to organize a sustainable shoot. This is also, even if you are progressing, but this is at the moment still a problem to get this stuff because it exists maybe once or twice in Germany, and it's booked already, so you have no chance then to book a generator, for example. And the flights, I think also the transport.
Yeah, though I think I have the feeling that maybe I'm wrong, that the flights are more and more, I mean, inner German flights, mostly the people understand that it doesn't even make sense because you're not even really doing economies on the time. So, but I think it's also changing habits. You know, you still have to be there, and I mean, you know it being on set that very often you see that people just tend to forget. It's not implemented as normal now, like doing the garbage recycle. I mean, we have to really be aware all the time. It's and to rethink. For example, now we ask people if if they would be vegetarian, but we could do the other way around also. We could ask them, so who wants meat? Please tell us. No, it's so we could think differently. And even if now it seems like impossible, it was the same with smoking like 30 years ago. And people said, no, you cannot forbid people to smoke in a restaurant. Yes, you can.
Police officers do not smoke anymore in our films. It's so just to show that it's not possible anymore. It's not a good way of behavior. Think about the seatbelt. Yeah, something like this. Sustainability should be very, very normal in future.
And it's for us, no? It's not against us doing all that. It's not trying to spare us something.
Absolutely, and with Filmsos, we tried. We're still in an early stage where we have prepared our we're about to launch our green production guide and toolkit, and we're in the midst of preparing for some workshops as well and talking about sustainability consultants and having a carbon calculator. But we did do a test, a kind of a pilot test on a small film shoot where it was a zero waste set and it was a fully green set. And we had a conversation with the sustainability consultant on set on the day, and we had already informed everybody to, that there would not be water bottles available and to bring their own, and if they did not have one, to let us know so we could provide that for them. And also the same went for meat and various other aspects of the production. In the beginning, it felt that this was something that was quite new to a lot of people of the crew, but by the time the day was over, we saw that people, the impression we had was there was a lot of positive feedback that came. So it's also this idea of, it seems to me, again, being just wearing the filmmaker hat here and approaching this topic from the creative side, at first there seems like there's a lot of facts, and it can feel a little chaotic as to how to navigate and contextualize everything. But a great thing about having sustainability consultant on set is that if that is treated as a head of department and it's an aspect that someone is in charge of, when we're on a set and we know how fast-paced it is and there's no time for anything that is outside of what is planned, and even what is planned can be hard to keep track of as well, to stay on top of it. If people are indicated, for instance, where their cycling is taking place and what the guidelines are as far as a green production is concerned, it seems like it's quite easy to follow.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's something, that can happen on a very small scale as well, which I think is very encouraging.
Yeah.
We have a question here, and I think then we're just about hitting our clock. So Ricotopia, sorry if I didn't pronounce this right. As an ecological filmmaker, I decided with my team to use extreme low carbon solutions, no planes, but interrail trains for the whole team, only recycled equipment, etc. My question is if tools exist to measure how CO2 reduction in productions, and is there European help to push us financially toward these difficult choices? Would you like to take this?
Can you repeat the last? Is there?
Sure. So my question is if tools exist to measure CO2 reduction in productions, and is there European help to push us financially toward these difficult choices?
To measure, we in Germany, we have a special a film-specific carbon calculator, which helps us to measure the emission of the project, let's say it like this. And concerning the European help, how is it in Greece, Emma? Do you have, is nothing there of financial help or something like this? We have the funds now, but to be honest,
for green initiatives, you mean financial incentives,
for example, or
on the green front, not yet. But it is something that, for instance, when we started looking into developing a carbon calculator, realizing that there are prototypes for it, but every country seems to be implementing and tweaking it to suit their own requirements. But yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be always more expensive. No, I think if you start, for example, a bit by the green storytelling, and if you really think, do you need all these scenes? I mean, how often we had shot scenes where we knew that we would never see them in the film, but we didn't. I mean, we didn't want to discuss it until the end with the director or something. I don't know. So I think it doesn't have to be so much more expensive, but I'm quite optimistic also that there will be help on the other side, because people get attracted, and on a European level, I'm sure that there is enough awareness to make it more easy to the people to act environmentally friendly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of encouraging news to see that countries are starting to implement their own this in their own agendas, and every country that is already making steps in this direction is expanding and influencing others to do the same. Let's hope it's good reason to think that it will keep spreading. Positive changes. So yeah, do we have any further questions?
No, I just saw now in the chat about, I mean, flights are just insanely cheap, and I really hope that politically it's going to be the other way around, that trains get more support from the governments instead of planes. You know, it's I mean, it's not possible in these times that you can fly for 20 euros from Germany to Mallorca or something. We have to change. It has to be changed on that level too. Huh? It's
absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nicole and Anika, for the incredible presentation and for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope everyone else did as well.
Thank you, Emma.
So did we. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Angeliki.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution in the discussion. You mentioned something that you have at the presentation you can share with us, right, in the beginning?
Yeah, the sources, all the sources we can share. We can send it, or we send it to you, and then
you can send it to me, and I can put it on our professionals platform, and I can also share it with a couple of people that were here that asked to be here, like the person that you were talking with before in the chat. So so thank you so much for your time, for the whole presentation, and for making some points clear, and the fact that we can start small and it still means a lot. That's the number one thing that we need to think, so someone keeps going.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.